Today, we're going on a journey into the incredible, complex world inside a child's brain. We're going to explore a really powerful framework called Ayres Sensory Integration and how it helps unlock a child's potential.
So, let's start with a really fundamental question, one we might not even think about most of the time. How does a kid's brain take in all the sights, the sounds, the feelings, all the chaos of the world, and somehow learn to make sense of it all?
All right, let's dive right in. To even begin to answer that, we first have to understand the brain's internal wiring. How it actually makes sense of all our senses.
And at the very heart of this is something called sensory integration. The best way to picture it is like the brain's own air traffic control center. It's constantly receiving signals, organizing them, and then interpreting them so you can do something purposeful. And for most of us, this just happens, It's automatic, completely in the background.
And get this, it's not just the 5 senses we all learned about in grade school. The brain is juggling information from all these systems at once. I mean, look at this list. Now, Ayres' work really put a spotlight on 3 you might not be as familiar with. Tactile, which is your sense of touch, vestibular, which is all about movement and balance, and proprioceptive, which is that cool sense that tells you where your body is in space without having a look. It's this incredibly complex symphony happening every second.
When that symphony is playing in perfect harmony, everything clicks. A child can learn, they can play, they can connect with others. But what happens when the signals get crossed? Or what if the volume on one sense is cranked way too high while another is barely a whisper? That's when things get tricky, and that's where this whole framework becomes so important.
So who was the genius who figured all this out? Well, let's meet the pioneer who really gave us a whole new way of understanding this process, Dr. A. Jean Ayres. Her principles are the absolute foundation of this entire approach.
So, way back in the 1970s, Dr. Ayres, who was both an occupational therapist and had a Ph.D., developed what we now call Ayres Sensory Integration. She came up with this radical idea that a child's ability to process sensory information wasn't just some minor skill. It was fundamental to their entire development.
And her core belief, really, it can be summed up in this one powerful quote. Intersensory integration is foundational to function. What she's saying there is that getting our senses to work together, it's not just a nice little bonus. It's the very bedrock of how we function in the world.
So what's the actual goal here? What are we trying to achieve with this therapy? It's all about helping a child develop what's called an adaptive response. Now that sounds super technical, but it's actually pretty simple. It's just a successful, purposeful action you take because of a sensory experience. Think about it, catching a ball, walking through a crowded mall, or even just sitting still long enough to hear a story. Those are all adaptive responses.
Okay, and this is where it gets really, really cool. The reason any of this works is because of this amazing principle called neuroplasticity. This is the idea that our brains aren't fixed. They can actually change and form new connections. It's like, imagine you're forging a new path in a dense forest. Through these guided, sensory-rich experiences, the brain can literally rewire itself to process information more effectively. It's incredible.
And the therapy is super focused on specific skills. For example, there's sensory modulation. That's basically the brain's internal volume knob. Then you've got sensory discrimination, which is being able to tell the difference between, say, a soft pat and a firm push. And then there's praxis. That's a fancy word, but it just means planning and then carrying out a new movement, like figuring out how to ride a bike for the first time.
Okay, so we've got the theory down, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's take a look at the therapy in action and see how it all comes to life through something really powerful, purposeful play. First off, why is this so incredibly critical? Well, just look at this number. It's estimated that a staggering 90 to 95% of children with autism experience significant sensory processing difficulties. This isn't some rare fringe issue. For a huge number of kids, it's a central part of how they experience the world every day. And these aren't just statistics, right? These difficulties have massive, real-world consequences. They can throw up huge roadblocks to learning and affect behavior. I mean, just try to imagine learning to read in a classroom where the fluorescent lights feel like blinding spotlights and the sound of a chair scraping the floor feels like an explosion. You can totally see how that would impact a child's motivation to even participate. Now, the whole therapeutic process is incredibly thoughtful and structured. It's not just random play. It all kicks off with a really deep assessment by a trained occupational therapist to figure out a child's unique sensory needs.
From there, they create very specific, individualized goals, and then comes the intervention. All those fun, play-based activities designed to meet those goals.
And honestly, the therapy room often looks like the most amazing playgrounds you've ever seen. You've got swings, trampolines, huge therapy balls, all sorts of cool stuff. But here's the thing, it's not just about having fun. Every single piece of equipment is chosen for a reason, to provide very specific sensory input. A swing gives that powerful vestibular input for balance, while crashing on a mat provides deep pressure and proprioceptive feedback. The secret is making it all feel like play, not therapy.
And that brings us to this absolutely essential concept, the just right challenge. The therapist's whole job is to find that perfect sweet spot for the child, an activity that's not so easy, it's boring, but not so hard, it's frustrating. They design these playful activities that gently push the child's nervous system to organize itself and, you guessed it, pull off one of those successful adaptive responses we were talking about.
So, what's the end game here? Where does all of this lead? Let's talk about the ultimate goal, unlocking a child's true potential. What's the real impact of helping a brain get better at sensory integration?
The ultimate goal is so much bigger than just getting better at motor skills. It's about empowering a child to fully and successfully participate in their life. It's about being able to be a student in a classroom, a friend on the playground, a member of the family at the dinner table. It's about building the foundation for all those meaningful parts of life.
And the evidence really backs this up. We see real, positive changes across some really important areas. As you can see here, sensory motor skills improve. But look at the other big ones. We see major gains in socialization, in a child's ability to pay attention, and in their ability to regulate their own behavior and emotions.
And all of these improvements become the building blocks for long-term success. A child who can regulate themselves is a child who's ready to learn. Better motor planning means more confidence joining in games. And of course, when a child feels more in control of their own body and their own responses, their self-esteem just soars. They start to believe, hey, I can do this.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today. While this therapy is so often focused on children who are struggling, it really poses a powerful question for every single one of us. Just take a second and imagine, what amazing potential could we all unlock if we just got a little bit better at understanding what our senses are really trying to tell us?